She's like, you're actually going to check that grade in order for it to count. Yeah, for you to get that extra credit.
All right, friends. Listen up. Listen up. So good for you for dressing up. I didn't dress up, but you'll hear my reason in a moment. I will not be here Thursday and Friday this week. My plan for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is to review this chapter. I need you to write down, utilize your notes, utilize any extra notes you want. That way you have that for the test, the two-part test you'll have Thursday, Friday, okay? Came across, I got, well, Saturday night, my youngest daughter said, yeah, let's watch a movie. Cool, watch a movie. Movie got over about 9:30, and I was just gonna put on a different show to then watch whatever for the rest of the day, or the rest of the evening. So I get a text from my sister, and the text from my sister said, call me. My mom passed away on Saturday night. She passed very quickly. And so her fortunate thing, my parents, their retirement basically consisted of, for a long time, for about 10 years, they were just RVers. They would travel all around the United States and do that. And Mom's health started to fail. 2 years ago, when they were up in Flagstaff, Mom's breathing was really bad and was hospitalized and was diagnosed with something called pulmonary hypertension, which is basically where the blood pressure on one side of your lung is higher than the other, which is not good. But what she was told, you can't be at high elevations any longer, which Colorado is. So she couldn't travel to Colorado. She couldn't go to Flagstaff because Flagstaff's high elevation as well. And then I think y'all remember back in October or in September when I told you that my mom had caught COVID, even though she was vaccinated and was hospitalized. And when I saw her in October, she looked horrible. And in fact, my mom's first words to me when she saw me was, "Did you bring your gun?" Yes. "Shoot me now." That's basically what my mom told me back in October. I took my wife and kids and around Christmas time, and we saw my mom. And down in Arizona, my daughters had some wonderful time with my mom and got to spend some good time with her. My parents then were kind of staying out in their fifth wheel at a place called Lake Pleasant, which is outside of Phoenix. Pretty nice area. And this past week, my sister lives in the house that I grew up in. My sister has a whole plethora of health problems. Fortunately, is doing much better, but still lives at the house. And my sister had kind of insisted that my parents come back to the house in Tempe, in which the house doesn't look, exterior looks just like where I grew up. Interior, my bedroom and another bedroom became a suite for my parents, and then my sister had the master, and then another room was like a sitting room. They kind of rearranged the whole house. This whole past week was really good with my mom. She was eating, she was comfortable, she was on oxygen because when you have pulmonary hypertension, and then you get COVID, and then you get all this other crap that goes on wrong with your body. So basically, Saturday night, my mom said, "My dad, I'm going to take a shower and get ready for bed." Mom gets out of the shower, calls out to my dad, and said, "Hey, can you help dry me off? I'm not feeling right." So Dad was helping her dry off, sat her down, with the toilet seat down to, so she could have a place to sit, was drying her off, and my mom said, "Hurry up, dry me off, I'm freezing cold." And then she says, "Get the towel off me, I'm burning up." Closed her eyes, died. That quick. So, of course, my wife is like, "All right, I have a flight booked for you for yesterday." I'm like, with brakes on. And my wife, God bless her, for being a caring, compassionate person, she just didn't. I was like, let's find out what is needed for my end. So I'll fly out on Wednesday after school and get back Sunday. So that's kind of the ins and outs of what I'm dealing with, which, not sure that was the news you wanted. So when you say, hey, why aren't you dressed up? And I don't fault anybody for saying it. I get you. Maybe I'll dress up for album day. But it was just a little tougher to, So I'm kind of like in this fog. I'm like, what's the rest of my life going to look like now? But, she'll be missed. She was a high school math teacher for 25 years, retired for 15 years. So dad seems good, other than missing my mom. Sister seems good. But just, the statement I always make to you guys, and hopefully you've heard it at least once throughout this school year, is take care of one another. So do that just for me. Take care of one another. Best thing you can offer. So, not to get you doom and gloom on a Monday, I apologize. But that's where I'm at. So we ready to review a little bit? So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll review. Make sure you have, the notes appropriate that you have. Yes, I will have a sub on Thursday, Friday during your quiz. I don't know who the sub will be. Might be a teacher at our school. Might be an arbitrary sub. Might be a sub who's actually a good sub. But yes, you will have a quiz or a test on this chapter. So let's make sure I do a good job reviewing for you, so you have all of the utilities needed for this upcoming event. As far as the test goes, I'm not too worried about you being able to manufacture and do correctly on a calculator the NCDF or anything like that. You would just have to write NCDF or whatever, and we'll come up with that.
It was $20 at the store.
Cool. Must be real.
Please tell me you want that.
Yeah.
Why would you want shit? So, all right, my friends, so we're looking at chapter 6. So I'm on page 21 of the notes. I was just going to kind of go through.
Are we doing the actual review?
Yeah, I'm just kind of floating through all of the notes themselves to make,
Make sure we covered everything.
yeah, just make sure we feel good about it. So on page 21, it talks about the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. And if you remember way back, oh my gosh, 4 weeks ago when we started this unit, bless you, or maybe 5 weeks ago, I don't even remember. We actually were physically writing out the entire null and alternative, and then we started realizing we could just symbolize it in order to do it. I don't care one way or the other. If you write out the entire null and the hypothesis in your words, or if you use it as symbols where you have mu is equal to, or mu is not equal to, or mu is less than, whatever, that's fine with me. But basically, when you get to a hypothesis, obviously you have been observing something that had piqued your interest, and that's what you're trying to test. You don't just come up with a null and an alternative saying, hey, let's just see what happens. I mean, you obviously want to have some sort of bought-in portion of what you're researching, okay? But that becomes tough because there's times that you might skew. Unfortunately, people will, because they're people, they're so passionate about one thing or the other that they might alternate their findings or their null and alternative null or hypothesis in order to make it fit their stuff. So, the null is what you come up first. This is what you test. This has basically the word no, that's part of it. And then you have your alternative. Is what could happen. Okay, I mean that's basically meat and potatoes of it. On page 21 it says null hypothesis denoted by H naught, and then is usually the hypothesis that the sample observation result purely from chance, and then your alternative H sub A. The alternative hypothesis denoted by H1 or HA. We'll stay more with saying probably HA. Of course, if you write H1, you're still correct in saying that. It's just how you do the difference between the two. Okay, so that's basically what I have on page 21. But if there's anything on the page where it kind of caught your eye, or you had some sort of marking when we were originally going through it that you need more explanation, let me know and we can go through that. And of course, I said that you are welcome to write out the null and the alternative hypothesis in full, or you can start just using symbols. I would imagine on the multiple choice test portion, they might have 4 choices that would be full sentences written out, but they might not. Okay? All right. I am now on page 23, research decision. What did I do? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So I'm looking at 6.2. At the early stage of research, you establish null and alternative. I see some of you are just on computers and phones, and am I wasting your time? And I apologize if I am. It's kind of rude. But I will tell you, in college, what my wife does when that happens, she says, "Here's a drop slip, get out of my class." Okay, she teaches chemistry for engineers at CU. My wife knows what she's talking about. Okay, and my mom says it's okay to do. Doesn't work in college. So I'm just giving you a word of warning. And I know that some of you, I'm trying to, I'm doing the best I can emotionally. And some of you are just like, oh, screw it. I'm just sitting here and do whatever I want, and I'm just gonna stir up during, questions during class. Or he's not gonna be here, so I'm just gonna cheat. Figure it out, seniors. And that's not to everybody. I'm just trying to address those who haven't figured out school yet. Okay, 6.2, page 23. At an early stage of statistical research, you establish a null and alternative. Ultimately, the decision must be made which hypothesis is true. So you get into reject the null or fail to reject the null. Now, I asked all of you, did anyone happen to bring up that verbiage with your English teachers? I want to know where the grammar is. I'm just curious. Did anyone ask? What did they say? What did they say?
Yeah, he looked at me.
Because there was 2 negatives in a row. Is that right? So there was. You had. Thank you. Appreciate you having that conversation. Who is the English teacher by
Mr. Foster.
And so but like mathematically, like you don't have to understand. So you just realize. Did he feel that his bad grammar?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not a big writer. I do enjoy reading, but I mean, when this guy who can still write at about a 3rd grade level thinks it's bad, I'm thank you, appreciate you looking out for me. So, fail to reject the null, or reject the null, or fail to reject the null. The language of these 2 decisions seems odd. Okay, I think we all agree on that. We can't prove or even find strong evidence for a null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is the default hypothesis. It is the hypothesis we assume is true unless we find strong evidence against it. When we fail to reject the null hypothesis, we are simply saying that we have not found strong enough evidence to claim that our default hypothesis is likely false. Therefore, logically, we must accept the null hypothesis as plausibly true. And that, again, there's all kinds of wiggle room that takes place with this. And I think this is all stuff that you have started realizing with this chapter, that, with the right research done, you could be looking at the exact same data, and depending upon which test you use, how your writing takes place once you get past the fail to reject the null. you can support one way or the other, and it's crazy. So, so I have down on 23, it says, in the bolded, it says, if we fail, if we reject the null, we had found strong evidence. Okay, and this one had to talk about the fish oil does not reduce the risk of heart disease, and that was our null and our alternative was fish oil reduces the risk of heart disease. So if we fail to reject the null, we find strong evidence that fish oil reduces the risk of heart disease. If we fail to reject the null, we did not find strong evidence that fish oil reduces the risk of heart disease. Now here's the real goofy. If you read that term one more time, it says, we did not find strong evidence. Strong evidence. The strong evidence is where we have to start thinking about, is there enough for to say we definitely found something? Could you have found evidence and you're kind of like, especially when you're talking about your normal curve and you're bringing it in closer and closer, it's like, we're so close. And that's where you start realizing, did something through your research happen by accident? Would it happen the same way if it happened again? And that's where you start bringing that alpha in when we start talking about that. So we talked about one tail versus two tail. One tail would basically mean, hey, we have something less than or something greater than as far as the alternative hypothesis goes. If we just said we want to find evidence that there is a difference, then that would be a two tail. So you're going both ways. And again, what did we learn about two tail? We talked about it this past week. Yeah, and what I want you to realize, as you are all smart people, okay, you'll read something, and there's certain things that I want you to realize that when you come across, allow it to create that little doubt. Allow you to challenge it. Because if it's truly a really good research study, and you were able to talk to the people who conducted it, their answer saying, well, this is what our data shows, is almost as bad as being in the nuh-uh, yeah-huh argument. Okay? So, and that you live your life the best you want. But I know that each and every one of us has embedded into us some sort of mode that we feel it's okay to argue about something or question something, saying, that doesn't seem right. It's really okay. And again, if you had somebody who ran a study saying, well, that's what our data shows, again, that's really bad arguing. That if any of you are in speech and debate, you know that if you want to pick up an issue and find a point and counterpoint and argue it, somebody saying to you, that's just not true, and you're like, okay, well, what makes it not true? Well, it just isn't. Well, help me. And these are all terms that you've heard, unfortunately, growing through life. I mean, we're in a country that sometimes is very divided on some things, and every now and then might say, hey, we feel good about something, but my gosh, we couldn't decipher which soda tastes better back in the 70s during the Pepsi Challenge to see if Pepsi tasted better than Coke. Okay, so one-tailed versus two-tailed, I think we went over. That's on page 24. You get to page 25. I'm skimming. So that starts talking about some p-value on page 25. And p-value, I probably didn't teach as good as I could have, so maybe we can build upon it. So this is the probability of obtaining a result at least as unlikely, and I'm just writing verbatim what they have and we'll talk about it, unlikely as the one we obtained by random chance. Okay. Chance, change. Why am I putting change? P-value. Okay, so remember, the p-value happens with, I just forgot it. What's the key thing on the calculator? Normal CDF, thank you. Normal CDF. Okay, so there's times where we would use standard deviation. Sometimes we would use the standard error in there. When would we use standard deviation versus standard error? What's the big time, even if standard deviation is given to you in the problem, when would we not use it? Okay, I like that. So less than 30, but we talked about there's another test that we could use. So I like the less than 30. So there's definitely some items there. What else was there? There was the n times p is greater than or equal to 10, and the n1 minus p is also greater than or equal to 10. This had to do with the percents or probabilities. This had to do with number of people we found. But there's one last real biggie that we hit last week. I think there was a thing we had said, hey, the standard deviation of our sample is. Comes from the sample. Okay? So if you have a standard deviation, if the standard deviation comes from the sample, my writing is horrendous, I'm sorry. Comes from sample, then must find the standard error. Okay? So that's really big. And that's just something where you're reading a problem. I mean, I know that you are all well-read. You're more well-read than I was when I was in high school, being that I think I read Lord of the Flies, and that was the summation of all the books that I ever read in high school. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I would try and fake it. But I like the book Lord of the Flies. I'm like, why can't everything be like this? So Romeo and Juliet, I didn't get into it. I like the fact that you had a guy that liked a girl. Didn't think that, didn't like how the story ended, but whatever. But.
So you like children touching each other? Yeah, children eating each other. Yeah, you like children eating each other?
Mm-hmm. Because I wasn't piggy.
They eat each other. Yeah, there's a scene where isn't there they eat like the chubby kid, right?
Well, the chubby kid gets a rock over his head, so.
Yeah, but I thought they do eat him. Oh, okay, I guess not. They eat him like they don't talk about them eating them, but it's like that they. I think I remember having a conversation with my English teacher about this. Yeah.
Of course, the last time I read Lord of the Flies was 1987, so. So I might not remember exactly, but I do remember old Peggy died.
And they took his glasses.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh. And I don't know why I like the book so much, other than thinking, oh, what would it be like if me and my buddies wind up on who would wind up destroying the other? Who knows? Do what?
The point is that Syrup doesn't like Romeo and Juliet, but he does like Lord of the Flies. That's the moral of the story.
There you go. I'm glad you guys found the point in that. Okay. All right. So low. This is still on page 25, so I'm just kind of writing it. We can talk about this. So it says low p-values result when we obtain a sample that is very unlikely to have occurred by random chance. Okay, so this again is on page 25, so I just wrote it best I could. So low p-values result when we obtain a sample that is very unlikely to have occurred by random chance, meaning we picked We had enough people chosen by a random stratified sample. There was randomness that took place. P-value is low, that's good. So therefore, a low p-value produces strong evidence against the null hypothesis. Okay. A low p-value produces stronger evidence against the null. So again, when it starts talking about the null, if you go back a couple page, if we reject the null, that means, we find strong evidence that it doesn't have something. If we fail to reject it, we did not find strong evidence. So if we reject the null, we found strong evidence that something might reduce or increase, a disease or whatever we're testing. If we fail to reject the null, we did not find strong evidence that there was any change in what we found. And then the p-value comes into place saying, hey, is this likely? That p-value, what it's basically doing is finding you basically a standard deviation mark someplace on our stuff. If we have that standard deviation that falls within our shaded region, that might mean something. If it doesn't fall within a shaded region, what if it falls really close to it? What are things that could or could not do? Other things, and this comes from page 26, if the p-value is less than 5%, we often reject the null. Okay? And then why 5%? It's just, that becomes an arbitrary thing. That's like a 5% chance, 5% probability. Could the p-value be less than? Yes. Could it be bigger than? Yes. But the 5% is kind of a good indicator. Okay, so friends, I took us from 6.1 to 6.3 much faster than we learned it, but I'm just trying to review it. Yeah.
Can you kind of explain again how the p-value and the alpha relate, like how they connect to each other?
So the p-value is gotten from us doing the normal CDF. Okay, so it's an actual mathematical comprehension. The alpha value takes place, let's take a really silly scenario. Let's go out to that intersection right over there, the light at Yosemite and Union. And let's say you're out there observing and you're like, there are so many people that keep running this light, running this light, running this light, running this light, running this light. But it's just your observations. Now, your observations might be taking place at between 7:45 and 8:20 in the morning. Okay? Does that mean that a great deal of people run light, or just during a certain time that people are running light? Well, you don't know. But let's say you say, I counted 500 cars going through that intersection. I'm just picking a number. It could be more than that. It could be less than that. I don't know. And I noticed that 20% of them ran the light, meaning it was red when they entered the intersection. So that person might say, I have an alpha value of 20% because they observed it. That was what they did. They weren't doing a study. They were just out there realizing maybe they've been driving. Maybe they're an older person who lives in the area who didn't realize that a high school was built here in 1955, and if you live right next to a high school, well, yes, you might get teenage drivers that are going to take some riskier chances than your 80-year-old person who probably should realize, while school is in session, it's probably fine. Maybe I should stay away from the King Soopers 4th, 5th, and 6th period. Maybe I should either get to the King Soopers real early or later in the evening. Just anything. But let's say that person is a statistician. They want to run this. So they go to Greenwood Village PD and they're stomping and hooting and hollering, saying 20% of the cars that go through this intersection run the red light. They observed it. Then Greenwood Village PD comes out saying, all right, we got this guy, just to appease him. You know what? Let's put some of those things that we'll take a picture as you run the intersection. Well, let's also have those strips they put down that count the cars as they go over. And let's say Greenwood Village PD, being that they they had that out there for 7 days, 24 hours a day, well, they're going to find out that it's probably a lot less than the 20% that this upset individual claimed. It happens. And you know, because I'm older, my social media is limited. And the one that I crack up with is the next door neighbor.
Oh, I love next door.
Oh my gosh, there's nothing better than neighbors just shaming each other. This dog pooped in our yard. So what? Go take one of the plastic bags your newspaper came in, go pick it up, throw it away. Don't, crimes against humanity haven't taken place because someone's dog pooped on your yard. Like, oh my gosh, none of these people are posting their the doorbell cams. Whose dog is this? Who cares? But it's just crazy. Yeah. There was a guy, I thought this was funny, the reason I'm a little upset with this guy is this is actually something I should have posted on Nextdoor. So he took a picture of those the Japanese beetles, the ones that, and he's like, I found these beautiful insects in my backyard. I keep feeding them, and they're so wonderful. And he's just being sarcastic, and people are just blowing up. And I just know this guy was just laughing because someone's like, my gosh, this is just sarcasm.
They're like sending him death threats.
Oh, man, I'm firebomb his house. I'm like, you realize he's being sarcastic. Oh, but, people don't have the same sense of humor. I'm glad I didn't post it because if I got that kind of hate mail, sent towards me, I'd be a little bit different person out there. So, hey, I want to get done. I want to be done up to this point. Would you do me a favor and peruse through just the notes of it so you feel good about it? And we can cover anything from 6:1 to 6:3, but I hope by tomorrow we get a little bit further. By Wednesday we get even further. Therefore, on Thursday and Friday, which I will not be here, which I had let you know that I won't be here. Yeah, my mom passed away.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Thanks, buddy. So I had the whole story in the beginning of the video if you want to go back and listen to it. So